My name is Juanita. I am a medium, and I consider myself a Terra-psychic. I am the pastor here now, so be kind to me. One of the things I think is important is to use, I have a lot of earth-based beliefs. I was raised Catholic, but I have a lot of earth-based beliefs, and obviously I do mediumship. So I don't know if you want to call that a mix, but I want to be progressive and at the same time hold on to some of the old ways of living, mainly for my own lifestyle. But what I want to talk to you guys about today, because of my mediumship, is the spiritualist principles that we ramble off during service. Last week we had a speaker here who said, as spiritualists, we don't need the 10 commandments because we know we're not supposed to kill people. Instead, the spiritualist principles that we have are showing us a way to live, right? Some of the things that we have to remember as we're living life. And today, what I want to talk about is the principle number 4 that we spoke of earlier, which is we affirm that the existence of and personal identity of the individual continue after the change called death. Okay, and this is difficult for some people to believe and to embrace. As a medium, you live it, right? That's what we live our whole lives. Not everyone is born being a medium, so I'll tell you a little bit of my personal story. In April of 1984, I was in Spain. We lived in Germany, and it was my sister and I and a couple of my friends. We had taken the bus from Germany down to Spain. We were in a little coastal town. It was like population 200, 50 discos. And so we were, in a little town. And at about 2 or 3 in the morning, we had switched rooms, my sister and I, with the other girls that were with us. And it was a small bed and breakfast type situation. If you've ever been to Europe, you know that it's a lot of B&Bs, and there's not, at that time in '84, of course, no internet. We didn't have phones in our rooms. We went downstairs for breakfast with everybody else at the same time. And so at about 2 or 3 in the morning, the desk personnel came up to our room, knocked on the door, and said, "There's a phone call for you. There's a man on the phone that wants to talk to you." Well, we had switched rooms, so it would have been for myself or my sister, and the girls that were in the room, they freaked out, of course, like, who's calling at that time? And they run downstairs. Nobody's on the phone. Nobody was there. And so next day, we try and contact whoever we can in our family. Remember, it's still another country, right? Nobody called. Okay. We came back from Spain, and my mother, who's sitting right here, we had the whole family pick us up, and she shared with us that my brother had passed away, April 27th, at about 2 or 3 in the morning in Amsterdam. So it wasn't, right away it didn't register, but, a couple days later I was like, holy cow, that phone call, I remembered the phone call, was like he was calling us. It was such a random thing because at that time I wasn't really into that. But what I will say is that my grandmother, I still call her the closet medium. She always told us stories about talking to people who had passed on. And she always had these signs and things that would happen when somebody passed over to the other side. So she was always telling us those things. And for us, it wasn't like, oh, my grandmother's a medium, oh, my grandmother's a psychic. It just was. We just knew that when you're on the other side, you communicate with everybody on this side. That's just the way it was. So weeks later, she started seeing my brother. We lived in an apartment complex, and it had you had to ring the doorbell to get into the stairwell to get up. And so he often, because he would have been 21 that year, so he was 20 when he passed away. So he went out a lot and played a lot, and he would ring the doorbell, like he would, for whatever reason, not have his key or not be able to get to his key or God knows what. He would ring the doorbell at all hours, and she would have to get up out of bed and buzz him in so he could come in. soon after his passing, the doorbell started ringing, and she'd go in. First, you know, she would say, "Is anybody there?" and she wouldn't hear anything, and then, you know, she'd buzz it, and then it was a progressive thing. Then after that, you know, she'd get up and she'd open it, and she would hear his footsteps. He had these boots that he always wore that were kind of a little bit Western style, but they had this slanted heel, and when you came up the stairwell, you could hear the boots. So after some of those, she would hear the boots coming up the stairs. And then soon after that, he would be standing at the door when she'd open the door, not really speaking to her. And this happened, it went on for a couple of years. It didn't stop until my grandfather passed away, and then it all stopped. But for her, it wasn't, you know, it was just like normal. Like she would try and talk to him, and, you know, if she opened the door and she saw him there, she'd be like, "Are you okay? Come inside." Or, so it wasn't like she was scared or thinking, "Oh my God, it's you," or, which some people would do, right? They'd freak out and be like, "Oh my gosh, I just saw a dead person." For her, it was like completely normal to see him and to try and communicate with him. So I kind of, it wasn't an odd thing for me to kind of move into this, although when it did start, it was weird for me, but that's a whole other story for another day. But I mentioned this today because a lot of us in here have Christian backgrounds, and today's Easter Sunday. It's the day of resurrection. Today is the day that Jesus rose from the grave or came out of his tomb, started walking around town, and people were seeing him. Like, "I saw Jesus today," and people were like, "Oh, no, 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 no." He appeared to Mary Magdalene, first and foremost, right? And then to his mother, and then later to the disciples, who said that he was flesh and blood. Like, he wanted to prove to them that he was not just a ghost, that he was he was incarnate. And so, I don't want to say I don't believe in the Bible. What I want to say is there's a lot of truth in the Bible and other people's truths in the Bible, okay? But we want to go way back. To me, when I think about Jesus, I think about someone who was a healer, who was a prophet, and who proved that life goes on. But that's because of where my core values are and the things that I believe. And so for me, that's how I believe that this was one of the first people that proved to us that there is no death. In fact, he said that, right? That we go on. And that's what everybody's celebrating today. In other religions and other, you know, there are other beliefs in other churches. They're celebrating resurrection. So it's not just about, and whether or not they saw him incarnate, my older son, who's 25 now, he saw spirit from the time he was little, like he sees you and me. And he really thought that there were people standing around that weren't part of the family, and he would tell us about it. He had a little boy that would be in his room, and he freaked out because he'd be like, "Mom, there was a little boy in my room," and the little boy appeared more than once, playing a drum, and then he walked through the wall. You know, like, then that's when he was like, "Okay, that's not right." You know? But before that, he was like, it was just like everybody else, because we're so little. When we're little at that age, our right brains and our intuition are so strong that we know that our souls carry on and that they're still there. So it's not until we go to school and we start having to use our left brains and learning that we shut down that other side. Or we're scared, or somebody tells us, "Oh, you're crazy, there's nobody there, you have an imaginary friend," and we start to shut it down. I want to talk about souls. And I'm gonna use Rita right here. I'm glad that Rita's here today. Rita's pregnant. She's having a baby around May 19th-ish. A little girl named Lola Rose. And so I'm going to ask you, does Lola Rose have a soul?
Yeah.
Do you know when that soul came into her body? Big question, right? Isn't that an argument that people are like, when does the soul enter the baby?
I believe as soon as inception.
Okay. And that's kind of what I think, right? But really, the soul never was gone. The soul has always been there. It just slips into that vessel, like, okay, it's time to be in this body now. And so there's that question, and I've been, you know, I've read a lot of spiritualist manuals, and so they question about, well, how can people, you know, when you're dead, that's it, right? There's nothing else. But how can we believe in souls and then believe that? So I'm going to read something to you from, this is the Book of Mediums. It's by Alan Kardec. So forgive it's a little bit difficult to understand, but he wrote this in 1874, so they liked things to be more complicated than necessary. more words than needed. But he's essentially defending mediumship and the fact that we can communicate with those on the other side. He says, but these souls that people space are precisely what are called spirits. Spirits, then, are but the souls of people stripped of their corporal envelope. If spirits were beings apart, their existence would be more hypothetical. But if we admit that there are souls, we must also admit that there are spirits who are not else but the souls. If we admit that souls are everywhere, we must equally admit that spirits are everywhere. The existence of spirits, then, cannot be denied without denying the existence of souls. I found that very interesting when I was reading it because it seems so logical, right? But even I, when I first started on this path, because literally my mediumship opened when I was in the shower. I had been attending a Universalist church in Tucson for several years, probably 4 or 5 years, and of course my grandmother, you know, it was not something odd to me, but I was in the shower and literally there was a man in my bathroom. And I was like, uh-oh, something's wrong, right? And he started feeding me information, which I immediately wrote down, but I freaked out. I freaked out because I thought mediums are other people. That's Lisa Williams and Gordon Smith and, you know, John Holland and, you know, James Edwards, like John Edwards. Those are mediums. Special people, this little box of special people, they do that stuff, not me. You know, dead people don't talk to me. Like, who am I? So, and then I thought maybe I'm going crazy. I need some medication. I don't know. Talked to all these ministers. I was calling everybody, and they're like, "Why are you freaking out?" Like literally, they were like, "Snap out of it. There's nothing wrong with you. This is supposed to be happening. This has been your path that you've been pushing away for some time." And I was lucky that I was in a group, or I had a support group that was very comfortable for me to be in, which is kind of what this center does. It's exactly what this center does, what this church does, is we put everybody in a place where learning your gift of mediumship and increasing your intuition and embracing your intuition, and you know, I mean, it's two different things, but still your intuition has to be very clear for your mediumship to work. That's why we come together. We come together so that as mediums and as spiritualists in this particular principle, we remind people that life goes on. We don't end. There's a veil, maybe we don't see that person, but a lot of you in this room are mediums. You feel people around you. You hear them around you. You know, you see them. And there's nothing bad or scary about that. These are people that are hanging out just like we're all hanging out right now. Being on the other side, although they're still learning and growing, part of what they're doing is helping us on this side, because once you're over there, you're able to see things that we don't see because we're stuck in the quagmire of life, right? We're just like trying to make it through the day, and trust me, it's been like that for a couple of weeks for me and some of the board members. We're just going, we can't settle down. We're just moving all the time, and that's what they come in for. It's just like our angels who step in to help us with that, and our guides. They're on the other side. We can't see them, but they're talking to us. They're communicating with us. They're showing us the way. One of the things that I did immediately after, well, it's probably been 4 or 5 years now. My grandmother was very good with finances. She was like a budgeting genius. And I was having some financial issues. I could not get my financial stuff together. So I had conversations with her. And I said, you need to help me, because I do not know what I'm doing. Things are rough for me. I need your help. And she, sure enough, did step in. I don't have those issues anymore. I'm real good with budgeting and getting things, like taking care of stuff and getting everything. Finances are good, but I have to sit down and just really say, okay, I need help. So I urge you guys, when you need help with something, remember that person in your life that was good at it. And talk to them. And say, hey, you know what? I got this thing going on. Can you help me out with it? no matter what it is. If it's relationships, you have family members that were married for 50 years, they're in spirit, hey, talk to them. Can you help me with this? You're having problems with your kids and you know somebody that, you know, could raise kids well, talk to them, bring them in. We had, somebody told us recently that I have another, this is my grandbaby right here, by the way. You will see more children in this church, by the way. I know they weren't allowed before, but they are now. I have a 2-year-old that we were told my grandmother speaks to him often. And so, and we're cool with that, you know, like, okay, well, Omi's babysitting, that's fine. You know, we can use all the help we can get in every area of our life. So remember that as you move through the days and you know, you're thinking about, use your intuition for sure, but remember that you have family members and loved ones on the other side that are just standing there waiting for you to call them and say, help me out. And they'll come. Trust me. And with that, namaste.